Oh. I think I also want to sit. I feel so high when I'm standing, so I also take. No, it's fine. We make it more intimate this way. Yes. So, welcome everybody to the Innovation Café. I see many familiar faces, but also people who haven't been here yet. Who is here for the first time today? 1, 2, 3, 4. They are raising hands. We have 5 people who are raising hands. Welcome. I hope you enjoy it. We have it every Thursday. We have this Innovation Café where we combine tech and design together. And the idea behind is that we are facing wicked problems in this area of Brainport, not only in this area but worldwide. But let's focus on Brainport for now. And the idea is that we inspire people with design and tech to find solutions for these problems. So see it as inspiration. And today we have 2 special guests. Oh, I also forgot to introduce myself. My name is Charlotte Grün. I'm also a designer based in Eindhoven, graduated from the Design Academy, and I will be your moderator today. And today we have 2 special guests, Simon Dogger. And I worked on your, now I have to check. Now I don't know it anymore. Nephtaly, sorry. We really worked on it in the car, and now I totally forgot it. Nephtaly, sorry. I think it's a bit the energy right now. Nephtaly, welcome. And today we don't have a PowerPoint. You will find out shortly why it is. Nephtaly, shall I give you the word?
Yes. Okay. I don't have a PowerPoint today because today is about vision. It's not about sight.
Maybe it's better to switch mics because this is really hard. Yes.
Test. Better. So I have some keywords on my phone because I found it really difficult, but there we go. Welcome all. Thank you all for coming. And as I said before, my name is Nephtaly. I'm a programmer, and today I want to share my experiences that brought me here today. Some of those experiences actually inspired me, and I hope they will inspire you too. I started as an electrical engineer at TU in Eindhoven, and I was surrounded by just other engineers, people who were different thinking, and people who were not afraid to go against the current that was going on. And that situation, it was so nice because the engineers, they took on challenges for fun, not because they had to, but because they want to innovate. And this culture led me to join the Eindhoven student team, the Ecomotive. And from there, we wanted to create a car that was innovative, but it needed to be also electric. So if you think about a car, you don't necessarily think about plants. But plants are sustainable. So the idea is we're going to make a car from plants. And we were young, we didn't know much, but it was very challenging. But with determination, a good teamwork, and just creative thinking, we actually got the car going. And the car is still road legal. And I think last week it was driving in Friesland for an event. So I'm really happy that we built a car out of plants. And after that, with the same group of innovative engineers, they started a company called Vention. And Vention is a small company that takes on all different kinds of projects, mostly projects that are too small for the big companies. And it's not to say that the big companies have a money issue or something. It was just because it was too experimental. And some might say, it's the mindset, because thinking out of the box, that was our unique selling point, so to say. So, sorry, I lost. That's okay. So thinking out of the box was a selling point. So we took on anything. We were young, we didn't care, and most of the times it actually worked out. So we had some small projects from wearables for dogs, which helped the doctor, to bigger projects, for example, that helped with the energy transition. And one of those projects, if you think about those projects and the impact of innovation, you can really see that I'm talking about cars, sustainability, waste reduction, those things. But if you think about the impact of innovation, and not think about what a small group of people can do for a big company, but think it the other way around. Like what a small group a huge impact for a small group. That was what we were going for. And one of those projects that has really a really huge impact for a small group was TickTick. TickTick was a collaboration between the Van Abbe, Simon Dogger and Vention. So the idea was to create, Van Abbe started with having an exposition, and the exposition was just in a museum, and it was multi-sensory. So think about you're being visually impaired, you have bad sight, and you're going to a museum. How can you enjoy the exposition? And that's exactly what the Van Abbe thought. Like, how can we make it that you can experience a museum without actually seeing it? So the Van Abbe made a small exposition, and you could smell some of the things, and you could hear some of the things, and you can touch a Mondrian. Well, not the real painting, but they created in 3D a Mondrian, and so I got to touch a Mondrian there. And the idea for TickTick was, we want to take it one step further. We want to create a navigational app for that exposition. So then you have an exposition, you have blind people coming, and you have a museum. How are you going to do that? And the young people we were at Vention, we were like, we can do that. We know how it goes, because take a look at Google. If you have Google navigation, you have also haptic feedback. It's simple. You have 1 tick for left, 2 ticks for straight, and 3 ticks for right. I mean, how hard can it be? So we thought we'd do the same thing, like haptic cues if you have to go left or right. Well, boy, we couldn't be more wrong than that. It was absolutely horrible. It didn't work because the tactile feedback was created with the mindset of you looking at the screen. If you looked at the screen, it made sense. But without the screen, it was very hard to distinguish the patterns. So then Simon and I thought, okay, let's do something different. Let's use the frequency of the feedback. So tick, 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 tick. And then we found out that it's actually quite hard to feel the delay between ticks. Like, you can feel it's faster or slower, but you cannot feel how close you are. And for me, I have eyes, I can see, and it made sense. But I gave it to Simon, and Simon said, nah, it's not what we're gonna do. And I still remember one good story. Like, I was all day, all night working at a small demonstration for Simon, showing him the new patterns I come up with. I was like, let's make them quicker and slower, and tick, 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 and then some other rhythm. I was feeling it, And I had so much fun making it all day. And then the next day Simon came in and I said, Simon, look at this, it's gonna be amazing. And he held it in his hands. It took him 5 seconds to say, it's not what we're gonna do. And I wasn't even disappointed, because at Vention I've learned that sometimes it's better to completely start from scratch. So that's what we did. Simon and I think it was a very short meeting, but we went back, and a day later I got some voice messages, and the voice message went like this. Nef, I have an idea what we can do. It's like this. And then and I understood, I completely understood what he was saying. Because Simon was saying we actually need something like continuous feedback. So you have those magic sticks. If you go to the desert, there are those the wiggelroeders in Dutch. You can use them to find water in the desert. So you just walk around, and magically the things do something, and then you know that there's water. Well, Tic used the same thing. You grab your phone, and continuously the phone starts to vibrate. Like if you're on the correct track, the phone will just do like tick, tick, tick. Hence the name, tick. But when you divert from the track, the phone will actually start vibrating louder and louder. And it's so intuitive because we all know that this phone I have in my hand and someone putting it away. We don't like a vibrating phone in our hands. We hate the vibration. Some people put it on silent. Ooh, we don't want it. So if you are to walk a tour in the Van Abbe, and you don't want to knock on the real Mondriaan, and you have to have feedback of where you're going to go. If you have a phone in your hand that's just normally tick, tick, like a heartbeat, and then when you divert from course, it starts vibrating louder and intenser. It's so intuitive to walk with it. So what we did, we actually built on top of that that solution. And I still remember some of the test trials I did with the engineers at work. I just said, hey, you want to test something for me? And I said, oh yeah, well, why not? Here, let me blindfold you. Take this phone in your hand and try to walk to the point I pointed to you earlier. And they're like, what? Just go. If it doesn't work, if it's not intuitive, it's our fault. And if it works, you can be amazed. And it took them, maybe 5 to 10 seconds. Just take the phone and then just like someone who has a blind stick in his hand, just going from left to right, sweeping, and hey. And then they started walking, and then started walking. Then there was a direction change, and the phone started vibrating. They're like, oh, it's not good. Left, nice. And in that way, Simon and I found a very innovative solution for a pretty simple problem to begin with. But because the dominant way of thinking for us, visually gifted, is that we use our eyesight for that. Like it's easy to use what you know. And Simon has some kind of limitation in his sight. And for me, I still remember the first time I heard about Simon, the blind developer, the blind designer. Like, remember, we're still the young guys at Vention. We didn't think of him that we have a customer who was blind and the blind was taking something away from him. No. We saw it as an opportunity. Because Simon is 2 for the price for 1. I got the designer and a blind person. And that was so inspiring that during Vention, the whole tick thing we developed just became something different and natural. And because I have no PowerPoint, I still need to check my phone sometimes. But nice. That went quick. Yes, so the thing is, like, Tic is now 4 years old, and if we look to the innovations that are done in the recent 4 years, we can see things coming up like AI, we see the IoT, like everywhere you have smart things, smart this, smart that. And if I look now at the tools Apple gives me to develop an app, for example Tic, it's way easier to develop Tic. Like, not that it's easier per se, but more that we could add way more features, object detection and those things. For me, it's a wake-up call, not something that I haven't heard before, but we need to stay ahead of technology. We cannot fall asleep. And I've recently graduated, and I had an amazing professor, and he said the same thing. He said, Nev, you cannot fall asleep. You need to push yourself. No matter the experience you did, you need to push yourself. And he said something that was really overlapping with what Simon taught me. And I just realized it on the way to here. But my professor always taught me to think multidisciplinary. There is no single discipline that can solve the problems of today. And there are a lot of problems we need to solve, and those problems are in multiple disciplines. But who are we to think that we can solve one disciplinary problem by using one discipline? So by using a multidisciplinary discipline solution, we can tackle the problems of today. And that's something what my professor taught me. It's something that Simon taught me. And I hope it's something that I taught you. So the next time you need to innovate, try to limit yourself. Be it in time, be it in resources, materials, or site. Thank you very much, and that's my story.
Thank you, Nephtaly. Was really
Oh, the microphone. Oh, ja, nee, ik wil even afgeven.
This one is not really working. Thank you. I have a small question. Is that okay, Simon?
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you two meet?
Yeah.
Give it to me.
Yeah. For me, Simon just happened to find the doorstep at Vention. I think the first was so the tic-tac I talked about was tic-tac V2, the second iteration, and the first iteration of tic-tac was in the museum at Strijp.
So you were not part of the first iteration?
I was also part of the first iteration. Yes, and I've learned a lot, especially if you're ever gonna make an app for blind persons. You have to be able to trust blindly on it. I think that's the thing I learned from the first thing. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry,
Well, just to add something to that, I graduated with the concept of an indoor navigation app, and Nephtaly said completely right. I went with it to the Van Abbe Museum, and they joined. So, but that was only for the second version, and for the first prototype, I got funded, and we made, with Nephtaly, we made the first version. And basically I found them, so I went to them. Of course I paid them, what made it easy to get in touch. But that's my memory of how we met.
Just happened.
It just happened. Sometimes things just happen. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, hello everybody. Like Nephtaly said, and Charlotte, my name is Simon Dogger. I am a designer. I graduated the Design Academy in 2017 as a blind student. I think I'm maybe the only blind designer in the Netherlands, or very little in the world. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I do as a designer, but I'm also going to share with you some interesting project that I'm working on now. And basically, I want to get back to Nephtaly. The reason why why Nephtaly is here, because basically a previous speaker he cancelled, and so they asked me to find another speaker, and I thought about Nephtaly. Nephtaly said something very interesting, because basically what Nephtaly is saying is that, you know, innovation starts when you have a limitation, or when you limit yourself financially, perhaps in other ways, time. But the interesting about Nephtaly is that what I experienced with the development of tic-tac, and being Nephtaly being the software engineer who made the two versions, I think Nephtaly is incredibly skilled in making complex information, such as augmented reality, feature points, how does it work, to explain that. So I think the development of the tic-tac app is really being a cooperation between me as a blind designer. I knew precisely what I wanted, and Nephtaly having the skills to explain that. Now maybe it was my assumption that tech people were limited in that, but Nephtaly certainly isn't, and also other employees of Vention, the previous employer of Nephtaly, they were similar to that. So yeah, I think that's quite special about making. You know, it's one thing to understand how it works. I think it's a higher level to explain that. Yeah. So, unfortunately, eventually the TikTok app didn't pass through. Basically, I developed a concept. I wanted to prove feasibility, but especially in that time, about 4 years ago, the technology was not at a proper level. And I want to stress out that I am a designer, I'm not a tech developer. So basically I stopped working on that. For me it was very interesting to find out the concepts. And yeah, and of course it would have been, I would have gone on with it if the lights were green, but at that time they weren't. So to tell you a little bit about myself, I graduated, I'm a designer. I have a design agency or a studio in Eindhoven. My work is a little bit different. I see different. I focus upon equity, connection and innovation. Innovation more in terms of ways of thinking. How do you innovate? What innovations do you make to change minds? How do you make the ways of thinking different? That's my interpretation of innovation. And of course, if I refer to the TikTok app, if that could also be technical innovations. I'm a good conceptual designer. I think that's my core qualities. Basically, what I can still do very well is thinking and talking. I work a lot with audio. And just, I want to share with you one project that I am working on now. So basically, I want to get back to Nephtaly again. Nephtaly said, because I spoke to Nephtaly yesterday. Yesterday he told me, well, the cooperation that we had with the TikTok app allowed me to understand different perspectives. But he also said, basically, because I gave the feedback, I allowed the app, which was for sighted and non-sighted people, my feedback allowed the app to actually work better for everybody. Because Nephtaly, if I might say so, developed the app still from a visual perspective and especially the tactile parts or the vibrations. But because I experienced it and I shared my ideas, I think it's important to understand that the collaboration that we had made an app that was actually better for everybody. That's an important thing to know. And you know, this year I started to wonder, how come I am the only blind designer? And so I do really think that the design field is in a desperate need of diversity. Everybody, schools are working on inclusivity, equity, diversity, but they're not diverse themselves. There's no blind person. Ethnicity. There's a lot of Western people who have the money to pay for it, but beside that, very little diversity. So they are in desperate need of diversity in order to answer the urgent questions. I believe that Charlotte referred to that in the beginning. If they want to answer the urgent questions, they need to become diverse themselves. I think the blind and partially sighted are can be really good designers. They have an incredible resourcefulness because they have to deal with challenges every day. You know, they need to, you know, fortunately Charlotte picked me up with the car. If not, I had to find all kinds of ways to get here. And this is just a small example, but also for me, I need to invent every day how to work, how to get to my studio, how to get attachments from my mail, because that doesn't always work, how to surf through the internet, which is not accessible. So, blind and partially sighted, I could say, their resourcefulness, they are great inclusive thinkers. They have, some of them, not all, but they have zintuigelijke verfijning, sensory refinement, sensory refinements. So how come there are none in the design fields? Well, that has multiple multiple causes. I think what they can, the design talents, well, they're not acknowledged, they're not recognized. So obviously, no one thinks about becoming a designer, because schools they don't think it's a good idea. Parents, they think, well, don't do it because you don't have work. So there are a couple of causes. I thought to myself, I'm going to start a design education for the blind and partially sighted. That's where I started with this year. Now, just a couple of things to set straight. It's not going to be an education just for the blind and partially sighted, but it's going to be for everybody, sighted and non-sighted people. I think that is eventually the ultimate goal. The future equal societies. That I think that's the way it should. Not a separation. Well, let me tell you, it's a long shot, or it's going to take a long time. So this year I had this vision. Basically, it's a vision. I had the vision to do this. I did a lot of research, online research. I took a look at a lot of scientific papers. I called a lot of people. I laid connections to schools. And basically, I thought, well, I need to prove that they are willing to come and that they can do it, because I think it's good to prove these things. So, at the end of August this year, I cooperated with the Technical University Delft, and that's where we did a field research of 4 days with 16 blind and partially sighted people. They came from the whole country. They all came, and I didn't pay them to come. They traveled by train, and they came. So I made it a little bit hard. I thought I kind of thought, well, I'm not going to pay them. I'm going to see what they're going to do. It's good testing out, but the fact that they all came, and the first day of these 4 days didn't really went smooth. The fact that they all came showed a level of participation, so that there is draagvlak, resonance, something like that. The other thing I found out is that they are able to do it. They're able to actually design. Now there are 4 days. It was flexible, so we anticipated on the flow, so we made some changes. So the curriculum, the design curriculum that we gave, wasn't really representative for a future curriculum, but still, we saw design quality, we saw design skills. In fact, I saw that the visual tutors who were there as well, they were impaired. They were impaired by their sight, because the blind, and especially me, they made, okay, so there were prototypes being made, and it allowed me to see very clearly where it could lead towards. So I wasn't limited by the way it looks. But the two visual sighted tutors, they also told they were limited. They couldn't think further. So this field research was the first test to go on, but it's gonna go on. It's important to know. From now on, it's really gonna start. So next year, my vision is to start diving into the vooronderzoek, the pre-design phase. Not really yet the feasibility studies, but the pre-design phase is about exploring the existing network, the desired network, research into the best practices, and what is already there. Talking with a lot of people, schools, belangenverenigingen, just some organizations who deal with the visually impaired in the Netherlands. I have to tell you a secret. They're quite conservative, which is, well, they're.
I'm just curious.
That's a long story, but in one sentence, they're not creative. They're less creative, and they come from a background where I also think the blind and partially sighted, where there was a lot of bias and discrimination, and so. Yeah, but in short, I think they're less creative. There's a long story behind that. But it's good that you say this, because I think one of the, if I'm getting back to the beginning of my presentation, why is this not being acknowledged and recognized? This autonomy and power, these design skills. How come the organizations for the blind and partially sighted are less creative? Well, one of the keys is, to my idea, is that there is an image in Dutch society, in society in general, of people with an impairment of being demanding. I'll illustrate it with some personal experience. I every day I walk from my house to my studio. And as soon as I stand still to think, it takes about 7.5 minutes as an average for somebody to come to me, to ask if I need help. Sometimes they even straight touch me by the hands. I'm afraid I'm taking too long, but. There's 1 hour and 15 minutes to go, so I hope you.
We only had 15 minutes, Simon.
Oh yeah,
you're on time.
So I'm finishing off. So, I mean, this is a good thing. That there's the good thing and a bad thing that people ask me if I need help. Well, first of all, they do, and it's coming from a learned behavior. They have learned in a certain expectation to deal with people on the streets. So that's a good thing. It's a social code. People help. Great. I also need it when I'm. So I always say I say thank you very much, but no thank you. But in another way, this image, het beeld van hulpbehoevendheid, this image of demand, I don't know the precise English word, but this image of What's the translation of hulpbehoevendheid? In need. Yeah, this image of people with an impairment being in need is intertwined in the way of thinking. And to my idea, this is the influence that, for instance, 71% of the visually impaired are unemployed. Many of them get rejected for follow-up education because schools think, well, we can't serve you. It's too difficult. Students for the PABO, it is basically primary school teachers. They get refused because the schools think you can't have an oversight. You don't have an oversight. Students in journalism, they get rejected because there's one element of photography. And just to connect to what I just said to you, Charlotte, about not being creative, that's present in schools as well. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a common sense. I do have to stress out that there's movements. The way of thinking is changing. Schools are changing. The whole education system realizes that there is a lot of theory and less practice. There's a high visual dominance. So they're slowly shifting towards that. I also do think that the equity and inclusivity catches more fire. So they're more willing to think along in that. Not at this point, but it's starting to get there. So you might wonder, what can a blind designer do? What can he be of added value for companies, and not only as working on inclusivity? Because if blind people or people with impairment can only become designers and then they're going to work on inclusivity, I think, well, that's a missed chance, because I do think they have a lot of strength. And Nephtaly explained that a little bit. But I want to share with you another story. There was a...
Maybe there are also questions already about your education, or do you want to first share this story?
I finish off quickly. Because this is important. What is the value of blind and partially sighted people in the design fields? Or in general, I would say, if a blind or partially sighted person is a part of your team, whether you're a cultural a cultural institution like the Kazerne, or you're a tech company, or you're a design studio, it has a value. And Nephtaly explained already that's a little bit. It creates another perspective. But I want to share with you a story that a blind participant in the field research told me. He was an old Philips employee. He was a system architect, working in healthcare. So he was busy developing this very complex two operation chambers with some kind of a movable operation table. And he knew he was becoming blind. And this was a time before he quit. And so he started to get used to the fact that he was going to be without sight. And when he did that, he started to observe other things that nobody else observed. The sound of the machine was terrible. Also the touch, certain sensory elements like touch, they could be better. And he told me, well, because I limited myself, and now I'm getting back to what, I'm closing off, now I'm getting back to what Nephtaly said. Innovation lies within the limitation. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions from the audience? Yes.
I'm Bas. I also work with heavily impaired people who have multiple disabilities. What I was wondering, when they use tic-tic, how do they decide where they want to go to? Was there a route that they had to specify in front, or?
Yeah, maybe I think it's the developer can.
Yes. Yes.
Microphone.
Yeah, I got the microphone. If you look at the Android platform or the iPhone platform, you can see that they both have an accessibility option. Also, your Windows has that, and it's a thing that you don't see a lot. Even if you make a Word or PowerPoint, you see accessibility options, and if you enable that, your phone basically becomes usable without using the site where you're used to. So what we did with tic-tic, we just enabled the the visual impaired accessibility options, and from that moment on, the whole screen, it looks the same, but it doesn't function the same. If you if you point on anything, it doesn't respond to it. So from that moment, you can select left or right or double click to select. So basically, if you ever control the computer with tab and space, that's the same you can do with your phone. And when a new element is selected, the voice-over takes over. So what happened? People opened the tic-tic app and they heard a selected destination. And after they're hearing that, they instinctively start swiping left, right, just as we look on the screen what we can do. And then you could select the destination. You could say, hey, I want to do the full tour or walk to this point, to that point. And the moment you select it, the phone asks you, hey, hold it straight until I'm initialized. And when it's initialized, the haptic feedback started. And from that moment, you could just walk.
And how did you do that? Was that with augmented reality?
I think I can
QR code, or
I think I can also add something. Basically, it's important to understand that first the space needs to be scanned in, and it's done by a visual sighted person should scan in the space. What I do know from Nephtaly, because he explained to me, it creates feature points through augmented. Oh yeah, I forgot. Augmented reality. So it creates a digital file of the room. Yeah, I'm showing it with my hands. How it's been done. So it creates a digital, basically a digital map of the space with feature points. And in that digital map, safe walking routes are added.
Yeah, and from those safe walking rounds, with the help of augmented reality, we could create a path and then have a full path throughout the whole museum.
We can also do that here then, Annemoon, maybe at some time, at the Kazerne. Yeah. Oh, Annemoon.
How many blind visitors do you have?
I really wouldn't know. I'm sorry.
No.
I learned from your vision. Fortunately, the Van Abbe Museum has a little bit different budget than we have, because I can imagine it is also quite expensive. And how much as I like it, can't we do it differently? That it's that you don't need to have it scanned in, and that there is more, a sort of a sensory. If there's objects, or because I can imagine that this would really help for a lot of people.
Yeah, Nephtaly is gonna do the practical things.
Yes.
But I want to say something before that. Because the Van Abbe Museum, they don't have a lot of money either. Museums, you think they have loads of money, but they need to get funding always. They've got paintings of millions, but still for €1,000 they need to beg on their knees to get that.
Same here.
Yeah, and who's the same here?
Same here in Kazerne.
Oh, in the Kazerne, yeah.
Because we have a program, and for the program we get funded by subsidies, and for this, of course, I also need to go back on my knees if we can have funding for something like this. This is not something that's there, but that's not the issue. It would be great if there would be a way to innovate that it's more accessible for everyone.
Yeah, I think Nephtaly knows the answer.
Ooh, yes. So it was at Van Abbe we did the second version of TicTic, and for TicTic V1 we actually used something called Bluetooth beacons. Basically the Apple AirTag, just spread around in the room, and then basically the same as how a ship navigates. If you see the light tower or you see the stars, you can find your position from that. But it didn't work that super accurately, and it also meant that people or organizations need to buy a lot of Bluetooth beacons, and that's something we did want to eliminate for the second version of TicTic. So for the second version of TicTic, you only need an iPhone, and that's it. So you just need an iPhone. I created 2 different apps for it. One is the scanning app, which is basically just walking around, looking at all things, and they do the same thing in Hollywood sometimes if they need to take a 3D image of a space. So you just scan it, and then you just walk around and say, I want a dot here, I want a dot here, and from that you create waypoints, and then you save it. And the nice thing about when we started using the iPhone, I think it was iOS 14 or something, it had persistency of the map. So you could save it once, and then transfer it, like via AirDrop. It was really, really cool to work with that. And then you can load it on a different phone. The phone could just start, and then by looking around, looking at the feature points Simon explained, it recognized where it was. And bam, from that it knows exactly where it was, it knows where you was, and where you wanted to go.
But I do think there are, the direction of the TicTic app was that it didn't take a lot of money because you could scan in the space yourself. That was one of the guidelines. I just want to inform you that TicTic app stopped. It wasn't at that point feasible. I think now the times have changed. But I also do know that there are many other apps, a navigations app, that work more or less in the same manner. I think, just to coincidentally, just a couple of days ago, I spoke to somebody who was working into wayfinding, and he was recently asked by the Maxima Medisch Centrum in Eindhoven. But he said to me, I think he told that the core thing is the tone of voice, the omgangsvormen, the way of being approached. If I listen only to this area, I think, the sound isn't really great. I mean, that can be improved. If you can do a navigation app, but it's also about making your space friendly and make sure that what's important to that people, visitors, if they're blind, partially sighted or sighted or whatever. To my idea, navigation is great, it could be great, but also it's important that they feel welcome. And it's about the space, it's about maybe even the smell. It's about the way they are being approached. So that's mutually important.
Okay.
Yeah, and maybe less expensive also.
We have another question from Zoe.
I am very fascinated when you were talking about the need for more visually impaired and blind people in the design field. And I wanted to share a short story that is personal. My great aunt married a painter, and he was a teacher completely obsessed with alternative ways of seeing. And then he was teaching in an art school in London. Later in his life, he lost his eyesight and continued to paint throughout his until he died in 2015. And he would paint portraits, and he would also paint landscapes. And the way that he would paint, there's a very famous reference that he painted his wife by touching her and then translating these like 3D touches into a canvas and paint. And he would also paint landscapes by looking through a telescope. He had one eye that worked a tiny bit, so he would look through this telescope at a landscape, and then he would ask his assistant or one of his children, "Oh, I see red, can you please pass me the red paintbrush?" But the person who was looking at the landscape couldn't see any red. It was the way that his eyesight was distorting the light color. And then in the end, he was his fame really grew because of the fact that he was blind. Yeah, I just think it's really beautiful to know that there are people who see the world in such a different way without being able to see with eyes and to see through touch or through distortion of color.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Innovation works better when you're limited. I want to say something about that. I mentioned earlier the skills of blind and partially sighted are not acknowledged and not recognized. Now that's obviously because they don't get to design schools, and there's less participation in art schools, and it also connects to what I said, the image of being in need, of offering help. That's generally of course not by everybody, but the average Dutch person, they thinks people with an impairment are in need. What I experienced in the field research in Delft, 16 people, an enormous level of autonomy and power. There was a software engineer. There was a podcast maker. There was somebody who was serving. There was somebody who was making ceramics. There actually was one other design student who's now graduating. There was and so if I'm going back to you, Zoe, that's where it's about. There is a power and autonomy, even though it's not really acknowledged or herkend.
Acknowledged.
Yeah. Okay.
We have another question, Simon.
Another question, please.
Hi, my name is Yama Saraj. Thank you so much for sharing about this diversity issue. I hear so many of these dédain, elitist people talking about diversity, but it's unfortunately from a sadness or charity or quotum perspective. But I think the most innovative people are marginalized communities. My company is a provider to the French Olympic team. I was based in Paris. I'm so inspired by the Paralympic movement. This is, I think, one of the few initiatives that really empower people. And so my question is, what do you think we should do to bring truly diversity and equity? What are concrete steps in our own city?
Communication. if you start to communicate, if you start to talk to people, just like I am sitting here, there you raise a level of empathy, or there's a higher level of acknowledging. It's about listening to people. It's about understanding the need of things. That's what I'm doing here. I'm sitting here talking about it. We're communicating. And that is a start. It's not the only, it's not, definitely not the only thing, because I also think there is a lot of talking, precisely what you say. Museums also, big museums in the Netherlands, a lot of people are talking about becoming inclusive, diverse, but the practice is way more difficult. Eh? And I kind of understand the interest that they have. Money, they don't know how to do it. They need to, for instance, schools, they have to make, basically schools, it's a business model. They get paid for every student. But to make it short for you, what we need to do, well, start communicating. And from there, that's the start. May I ask do you agree?
Yes, I'm a Dutch citizen from a refugee background. 26 years ago, I come to this country. I started with the MAVO and the language.
Yeah.
So in my way, I definitely witnessed systematic barriers, marginalization, exclusion, but I'm taking ownership, I'm not victimizing myself. So I'm very proud of what I achieved. Nevertheless, in my own city, I couldn't find institutional support. I had to go to abroad. So in this regard, I'm also trying to fight myself in, and I really applaud to your way of approaching it. Myself, as an amateur boxing champion, I have like a lot of different approach. And by the way, I know High Tech Campus and I know Nephtaly. We've all been colleagues. From my startup, I couldn't pay for it. That's why I said necessity is mother of invention. Most innovative people are people in marginalized communities. I convinced the guy at the invention to hire me. I couldn't pay for the services. But yeah, there were like 20 guys, like only hardcore engineers, like a little bit in the autistic spectrum. And I study industrial engineering. So for them, I'm already the marketing guy. And every day they are eating the disgusting boterham met kaas and fucking like ham. And they're telling me like, why are you not eating pork? No, you know, so diversity is relative, right? There's a lot of bubbles in our city. I think it's very good to mix engineers with designers, but also if I look at the design scene, it's like only white people from privileged communities, because people from my socio-economic class somehow cannot find their way at the design academy. But at the same time, if you're addressing complex socioeconomic issues, integration, participation, emancipation, I definitely think we need to create space that more people from lower socioeconomic class can become designers. Apparently, the journalist from Eindhoven Dagblad, he wrote about me, and I didn't know I'm a designer because he told me I'm a designer, but nevertheless. So I think there's, especially in the design scene, if I look at Dutch Design Foundation or Dutch Design scene, they're talking about like complex socioeconomic issues, but they're never participation or ownership by these people who are concerned around that. So I totally agree what you're saying, and I'm on your side.
Okay, thanks. Well, let's share contacts later. Just to hook on to that, so I think it starts with communication, but it also needs examples who do it, who actually do it, start doing it. And I think what I recognize, they in Dutch they're called kantelaars, in English.
Kantelaars?
Yeah, kantelaars, game changers. I like the word kantelaars in Dutch. But basically, I do understand they need a couple of skills, but one of the skills that they can possess is they have to keep on holding. And you have to hold on. It's what I do recognize. It's not always courageous. And I spoke to a couple of them. They lay awake at night. They start doubting themselves. They get pushed back by other people. They get questioned by other people. And well, persistence. Well, maybe, but I would say it's about holding on, try to hold on like hanging on a rope. You shouldn't let go. I think that's a skill.
It is. Yes, we have another question from Ernst.
Yeah, so I like your definition of innovation, that it is about thinking differently, and I wonder, is a school the right institution to help people to become designers?
Good question. Nephtaly, this is a question for you.
No, I'm going to take it. Is a design school a good institution to train designers?
Train? So, can you train somebody to be a designer is then maybe the next question. But yeah, so you want to help people to become designers?
Yeah.
Whatever that means. And is the school now the right institution, or is there maybe another approach needed?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I tell you, I share a little bit about myself. I was 29 when I entered a design school, sighted. In the third year, I became blind. But from my 21st until my 29th, until my 30th, I did all sorts of things. I biked through Europe and the Middle East. I lived in Japan for a couple of years. I did some work for an Arabic newspaper. I was a ground steward for the KLM. I cleaned toilets. I can go on a little bit more, but quite an extensive levenservaring, life experience. And just to get back to you as one part of my answer, I think if you want to become a good designer, or if you then, I think life experience is a very good way to do that. I always thought when I entered the design academy, well, I don't want to learn how to become a designer. I want to learn how to think. That was my main focus. And whether I could then become a designer or something else. And maybe that's an indirect way to answer your question. I mean, yes, I think you can learn how to become creative in other ways. It doesn't necessarily need to be a design education. I do think that the benefit of a design education that you get a paper in the end. And that helps nowadays.
Can I also add one thing? So as a developer, I have a small vision that I do not believe that everybody can be forced or learned or taught to become a developer. And I know that because my niece, she is also a designer at the design academy, and she thinks, her mother thought that everybody could learn how to draw and to paint and stuff. I still have issues with the circle, so I don't really believe that you can learn those things. And the same is for programming, like you can learn the basics, but I think really being a programmer has to come from inside you. And I think it's the same for a developer like Simon. And I still remember there was once an old lady who came to me here somewhere in Philips, or somewhere in Eindhoven, and she said, "Hey, you're a programmer, and I have this kid, and he's really smart, and I'm not that technical, but how can I make sure that he can become whatever he wants?" And I said, just give him the tools. Just give him the programming tools, or as my father gave me, a screwdriver, and I like those things. Like, just give them the tools to develop themselves, enable them. And I think what Simon is doing here with his initiative is creating an educational institution that enables people to use more than just the vision we are all used to. He enables people to use multisensory ways of thinking. And yes, I think it's not something you can learn, but I think the school of Simon really enables people. And I think that's the thing that needs to be done to get people with limitations into innovation.
And may I ask, can you answer the question yourself?
Oh, I have to go back. I was sitting next to you.
Yeah, so a school has maybe the advantage that it's a place where people meet. So you can address the diversity there, but I was more thinking if design is coming from craft, you could also take an approach how you learn craft. Yeah? So you are with a master and you work and create with a master in a more intimate context than, you know, a big institution where everything is organized and you follow a curriculum. And also these people get a paper at the end, yeah? So I think that can be addressed. Huh?
Yeah, just to react on that, somebody also told me when I said I'm going back to the design academy when I'm blind, he said, don't do it. You know enough already. But the fact is, when I came back as a blind person, it was really good because it gave me a couple of things. It allowed me to explore who I was or what I could be. And also, so that's one. So I had a space to actually invent myself again, initially doing visual work, and then realizing that that wasn't the way. And also, I think because there were parts in the curriculum that I didn't choose for and were not very exciting. Cooperations some went very bad in teamwork, but just that facts and also doing an internship, that allowed me to experience the full scope. So I think, for me at least, the school was very important for me.
Thank you. There were more questions from the audience, but unfortunately we're already quite a lot over time. But happily we have drinks. It's also good to have some liquid in your mouth after all this talking.
Liquid in my mouth, yes.
So thank you so much. Thank you, Nephtaly. Thank you, Simon. And we will have drinks. And if you want to stay for dinner, please come to Zoe. And you can also stay for dinner. The Innovation Café will be here every Thursday. Please bring your friends and colleagues and enjoy your drinks. Thank you.
Thank you.